Aging is inevitable. But here's something we often overlook. We don't all age the same way or at the same rate. Our later years are shaped by a convergence of social and genetic factors. These influences create distinct patterns of aging, patterns that gerontologists have sought to explain through theoretical models. From a gerontological perspective, there are three primary frameworks that describe how elders may develop or transition through life: activity theory, continuity theory, and disengagement theory. These models suggest an individual may remain active and thriving into elderhood, continue with familiar roles and routines, or disengage from social circles and physical activities, including those required for daily living. Now, it's important to recognize something here. These three outcomes are not fixed. They can shift over time. No matter what direction our bodies take, aging is not a personal failing. It is the product of biological design. But biology is only part of the story. As we age, we lose loved ones, we lose strength, we lose independence. Our social circles shrink, and isolation often takes root. And it's within this reality that an entire industry has emerged, the industry of assisted living. In California, these are officially classified as residential care facilities for the elderly, or RCFEs for short. They are non-medical and communal in nature, offering different levels of support: independent living, assisted living, memory care, and sometimes even home health and hospice services. But here's a key distinction. The regulations governing RCFEs are a fraction of those for skilled nursing facilities, which provide more intensive medicalized care. What assisted living facilities promote and what they sell to families and residents is the promise of community, meaningful engagement, and monitoring. And yet, when we examine how they function, we start to see a different picture. Sociologist Erving Goffman used the term total institution to describe places where people live and work under a single enclosed authority, like prisons, psychiatric hospitals, or military boot camps, and in many ways, even long-term care settings. Inside these spaces, daily life is regimented, routines are imposed, freedom of movement is limited. RCFEs, like other total institutions, operate with limited resources, minimum regulation, and human staff that is stretched thin. This structure leads to an over-reliance on surveillance, tactics of tracking and monitoring in order to serve residents in the active stages of aging. On the surface, these facilities are marketed as resorts, vibrant communities, even destinations. But the reality is different. Many of them profit from disengagement, reducing residents to manageable routines in order to sustain a business model. The result is what I call carceral care, where overpriced real estate is sold to an aging, vulnerable demographic, where activities of daily living are commoditized and out of reach for the majority, and where for some of those who fall into these settings, the feeling of imprisonment sets in. Under this institutional guise, care becomes custody. My understanding of this didn't come from textbooks. During my undergraduate years while studying criminology, I began to see clear parallels between incarceration and the elder industry I was working in. I had to confront a difficult reality. Many long-term care facilities operate less like places of healing and support and more like prisons. As part of the front line, I witnessed a system that profited from the containment of the very residents we were tasked with serving. Too often, we function less as caregivers and more as carceral agents. The potential to make a difference was there, but unethical staffing ratios and overwhelming tasks left us unable to provide the care residents deserved. These industries do not have to be this exploitative. To promote a greater sense of solidarity and community for those both living and working within long-term care industries, society must reimagine the culture in which these centers operate. The gaze must go beyond the external or internal decline of the institutionalized and instead be focused on the living legacy that they represent. The penal perpetuation can be transformed into a symbiotic relationship, essential to the fabric of our shared realities, which is missing in our current alienated climate. Before we had books, search engines, and now AI, we leveraged, revered, and utilized the connection with our elders to gain deeper meaning, not just about history, but about ourselves. By fostering this timeless connection between the old and young, society can begin to repair the fallout that is being perpetuated by those who seek to exploit our differences. Under this new philosophy, long-term care settings can be a center of intergenerational healing and the change our society needs. As the future automates and leans on advanced technologies like AI, industries like assisted living and elder care as a whole depend on empathy, a skill that can't be programmed. Empathy is not just essential, it's a sought-after, payable skill, often embodied by those historically pushed to the margins, those who have faced adverse experiences or have a disability themselves. It is my opinion that in a field built on connection, it is those who've endured stigma or adverse experiences who deliver the most ethical and human-centered care. Lived experiences bring value under these affirmation frameworks, and I must reiterate, this can be a center of mass opportunity and healing from the terror management many communities have been facing since the onset of COVID. Both the workers and residents in these settings deserve more, and this brings me to time constraints and rationing. Time is a commodity that cannot be metered in a total institution designed to house a vulnerable demographic. A service worker should not have to choose between which basic need to address or which resident matters more to check on. Rationing of time and care are a necessary evil for these workers to perform their work, which is not only traumatic to the resident being underserved, but as well the worker up against the impossible. The ratios assisted living staff face are not only unethical, but unmanageable. And it's sad to say, but in a lot of ways, this goes unnoticed due to the vulnerability of elders being seemingly warehoused in these centers. This is why rethinking the structure of RCFEs is a humanitarian must. Critical theorist Herbert Marcuse's idea of a great refusal, along with an understanding of French philosopher Michel Foucault's theories on surveillance and power, can help draft a framework for healthcare and health-adjacent industries that can extinguish our current reality of care. Assisted living facilities and more broadly residential care facilities for the elderly should not be owned and operated by shareholders, private organizations, or real estate moguls, as they often and historically are. Rather than the hierarchical and profit-driven structure that pits workers against their residents, these groups could work together in tandem in ownership and operational efforts. This would deepen our community's solidarity across race, class, gender identity, and ideology. Long-term care settings and total institution in modern day can both be sought after to live in and be a part of as an owner-employee or owner-resident under a cooperative model. Care can be both lucrative and symbiotic as a reimagined structure, drafting the future of these settings as a human right and not a real estate grab. Because let's face it, aging is inevitable. but how we treat our elders, how we structure the spaces they live in, is a choice. We can continue down the path of commodification, building institutions that profit from disengagement, or we can choose another way, one rooted in solidarity, mutual care, and a recognition that elders are not burdens, but the very foundation of our collective memory and wisdom. While some degree of disengagement may be inevitable, our communities and institutions have the power to design settings that promote connection, purpose, and preservation well into later years. Older adults who transition into homogamous, highly curated environments should not be left vulnerable to isolation, reduced purpose, or the confines of a 350 square foot dwelling. Instead, they deserve opportunities for engagement, growth, and dignity that affirm the fullness of their humanity. If you found this perspective valuable, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, what do you think needs to change and how we approach aging and elder care? This is Critical Education. Thank you.